today, we're mapping one of the most powerful and, frankly, one of the most invisible forces that shapes our decisions: guilt. But we're not going to talk about it as an emotion. We're going to examine it for what it really is: a mechanism of compliance. So let's just start with this. It seems like a simple question, right? But the answer can be deeply unsettling. We all like to think that our choices are our own, that our yes comes from some rational place. But think about it. How many times have you agreed to something, a favor, extra work, some social plan, only to get that sinking feeling in your stomach, that sense that the decision wasn't really yours to make? And this gets us to a really critical distinction. We have to completely reframe how we think about guilt. See, it doesn't work by convincing you that an argument is good or right. Its job is way more direct. It actually short-circuits that entire thought process, bypassing your consent completely. So let's look at the signal here. The best way to think about guilt is as a social short circuit. In an electrical system, a short circuit finds the path of least resistance and causes a power surge. Well, in a social system, guilt does the exact same thing to our ability to make a clear decision. So what does this short circuit feel like? Well, the moment guilt gets triggered, our focus just snaps inward. First, you feel this urgent, almost primal need to fix your social standing. You just want to be seen as good again. This leads to the second effect. You comply before you even get a chance to think about the request. The yes is a reflex, and this is the key. That yes isn't about solving an external problem. It's about relieving your own internal pain. And you might think this is some rare thing, but it's not. This pattern, this mechanism for compliance, it repeats itself everywhere. You'll find it in the most calming, most trusted places in our lives. It's just this quiet, constant pressure humming in the background. In a family, for instance, it often shows up as a kind of emotional debt. The phrase, "you owe us this," isn't really a request, is it? It's a statement that brings up a whole history of sacrifice, of expectations, of the role you're supposed to play. And so compliance becomes the only way to hold on to your place in the family. At work, you see the exact same mechanism, just dressed up differently. It's all about the group. The team is counting on you. This leverages that deep fear of letting people down. It stops being about the work and starts being about your loyalty. Saying no suddenly feels like you're betraying the entire team. And with friends, it's all about your social identity. The moment you hear "a good friend would," you're being presented with a choice that isn't really a choice. You either do the thing and prove you're a good friend, or you say no and risk being seen as selfish, uncaring, and maybe even risk getting pushed out of the circle. So how does this whole thing work so well, so often, right under our noses? Well, the real genius of the mechanism is how it makes an obligation that someone else puts on you feel like it was your own voluntary choice all along. At the very heart of this is a powerful psychological trigger called the reciprocity bias. We are just hardwired with this deep, ingrained urge to repay what other people give us. This creates all these invisible social contracts that run our lives, and most of the time, we don't even know they're there. This phrase. This is the perfect activation switch. It's a masterclass in using that reciprocity bias. This isn't a request. It's a bill being handed to you. It completely reframes the present moment by calling up a whole history of favors, making it feel like saying yes isn't a choice, it's just fair repayment. You can actually break it down into a clear 3-step sequence. First, a social debt gets created, either through a real favor in the past or just by reminding you of your role in a relationship. Second, a request is made that's directly tied to that debt. And then, the magic trick. Saying yes doesn't feel like you're being controlled. It feels like you're just balancing the scales. The control is completely invisible. Okay, so this brings us to the cost. And this is a really uncomfortable truth. The people who are most vulnerable to this kind of manipulation are often the people we admire the most. The kind ones, the conscientious ones, the reliable ones. Psychologically speaking, good people are just easier to control. Let's break down why that is. If you're someone who places a really high value on being kind, your personal boundaries are probably pretty permeable. If you're terrified of appearing selfish, well, your own needs and wants get overwritten pretty easily. And if you have a strong moral self-image, you become highly predictable. You will almost always do the thing that protects that image of yourself as a good person. So you see, the true power of this mechanism has nothing to do with logic or reason. It goes deeper. It targets your identity. It weaponizes your own desire to be a good person, a good partner, a good employee. And when your identity is the target, logic just gets left in the dust. Now, the advantage here isn't about learning some clever tactic or a way to fight back. It's not about becoming a colder or more selfish person. The real advantage is a fundamental shift in how you see things. It's about learning to see the game board for what it really is. Someone who is psychologically aware just learns to see these forces. They start asking different questions. Is this something I want to do, or is it something I feel pressured to do? Is this request about the task, or is it a test of my identity? They learn to spot when an obligation is being dressed up to look like fairness. And, most importantly, they truly understand that just because you complied, it doesn't mean you consented. So, to bring this all into sharp focus, let's end with 3 questions. And this isn't about judging yourself, it's just about observation, about turning this lens back on your own life. What guilt controls you? Is there a person, a relationship, a situation where you consistently feel that unease, that sense of obligation? A place where your yes feels like it's on autopilot? Second, where does your niceness hurt you? In what parts of your life has your identity as a good or kind person become the very leverage someone else uses to get you to ignore what you actually need? And finally, maybe the most important question of all, what do you feel you owe? Just take a second and think about the invisible contracts you're operating under, what you owe your family, your job, your friends, because seeing those perceived debts, well, that's the first step to seeing the forces that are already shaping you.